Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing very well today and ready to get into this deep dive. But before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to explain the format of this series. Currently, we're playing through Fallout 4. If you haven't checked out our Let's Play series yet, be sure to subscribe and then hop on over to our Fallout 4 playlist when you finish this video. I guess I'll also take a moment for a shameless plug and mention I do live stream over on Twitch Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time for a few hours. Currently, we're playing Fallout 76. But anyways, as far as this series is concerned, each week we're uploading 4 episodes of long format Let's Play content. The goal is by Friday of each week to have a unique topic to deep dive into. Whether that is Vault, a companion, a weapon or item, and even factions. A rule that I'm personally setting for myself is that it has to be something discovered throughout that current week to avoid any potential spoilers. I know Fallout 4 released in 2015, but who knows? Maybe some of you have never played it before. If there's ever a time where I miss something that seems interesting to you guys that I should have covered, provide that feedback. I'm new to this type of content, and I'm always looking for ideas and feedback to improve it for you guys. Now that we're on the same page when it comes to how this series is going to work, let's dive into Vault 111. So in today's deep dive, as we discussed kind of in the intro, we're going to be exploring Vault 111. But before we even get started discussing the Vault specifically, I personally, as somebody playing the game, as somebody talking about lore-specific things within the game, I do believe it's important that we understand how the player's introduced to the Vault and how exactly it's relevant to us during our time in Fallout 4. So, this does veer off into a much deeper discussion about Vault tech and the history of Vault tech and things like that. And I don't want to get into that today. I feel like that is a video dedicated to itself currently, or a topic that should be talked about in a totally specific video around Vault tech. But even before getting into Vault tech, I think it's really important that we play through Fallout 4 in general and talk about things like the vaults and the lores of the specific locations and things like that, and then dive into talking about something like Vault tech. And if we don't fully complete the game, I think it is important that we just get further into it, because Vault tech is just, there's so much to it. There's so many layers. It's like an onion. The further into it you get, the just more and more layers that there are. So we're not going to really talk about Vault tech specifically too much. We'll talk about it here in a little bit, but I think it's just important that we understand to the players currently in the actual lore that is considered canon, there's 122 known vaults within the Fallout universe. So it is important to understand and know not all of them were legit. You know, if you've played the games, you understand many of them, majority of them, when I say many of them, majority of them, probably 98% of them were, human experiment containers, basically. It was like they were like the equivalent of like a rat maze with and the people were rats put in there with different experiments. So whenever they were introduced to the general population of the United States, they were introduced as safety havens, in the event of, basically total atomic annihilation. If you've played the game or you know anything about the Fallout universe, you understand tensions were very high, lots of ground war and things like that going on, and then ultimately nukes were dropped. And fast forward 200 years, and here we are. So I think those things are really important to know and to understand. Fallout 4, it's set 10 years after the events of Fallout 3. So if we've played Fallout 3, we understand it takes place in 2077. And Fallout 4 takes place in and around the Boston area in the year 2287. However, the game does start initially about 200 years before then, because it's taking place, the day the bomb fell is where the game starts. So as soon as the game starts, it is the day that the bombs fall. But it's much earlier in the day because we have to create our character and kind of get fundamentally grounded. And we'll talk about how we're exactly introduced to the Vault here in just a second. But, it takes place in the year 2287, Fallout 4 does. Now, I will say, and I mentioned it briefly, it's not 100% possible to fully avoid spoilers. So what I will say is if you've not been watching our playthrough or if you've played the game, you're already going to know most of this. If you're not playing the game or you're not familiar with this information, I would really recommend going to our channel, watching our playthrough. I don't edit anything as far as the gameplay or anything like that. It's just me playing the game, talking to you guys, reading. Anytime I come across a terminal, we read it. If we find stuff on the ground like notes or letters, we read it. So I'm trying to really intensely read and discover as much as I can in that playthrough. So I would really recommend after this video, or even before you finish it, go over there, watch those. We've got 4 episodes up as of posting this video now. But without further ado, though, whenever we are starting the game, though, the sole survivor is looking for his son, Sean. So there's a series of events that occur in the beginning of the game in which ends us up in Vault 111, and we end up cryogenically frozen. And after a certain amount of time passes, in the moment, we're unsure of how much time has gone by. But we know that we wake up, our wife is dead, or our partner, I should say, because if you pick Nora, it would be Nate. If you pick Nate, it would be Nora, who's dead. And Sean is stolen from us, and then we're put back into a cryogenic stasis standpoint, and then we wake up later within the vault, and we emerge, and come out of the vault, and our main goal is to find Sean. Now, while we're going through the vault and things like that, we're uncovering a lot of really awful, quite honestly, dark, morbid events transpired during the time that we were not, cognitively present. And we're going to dive into those in a minute, but let's talk about our character, the sole survivor, a little bit, just so we have a full understanding of our character as well. Now we've kind of talked about it already a little bit. We play Fallout 4 as, what is referred to as the sole survivor. And the sole survivor is going to be, dependent on who we pick in the beginning. So if we create a male character, his default name is Nate. If we pick the female character, her default name is Nora. And basically, because obviously, we can change the name. I named my character Peter, that we're using in our playthrough. The 55-year-old divorced dad, Peter, even though, you're married or whatever, I named him Peter. That was the vibes I was getting from my character, was Peter. But he's usually referenced as a sole survivor, by the developers and people talking about him and things like that. And I believe on the radio, which we can't listen to while I'm playing on the channel because, I don't want to get flagged for copyright. But after the tragic experiences of the opening sequence, we emerge from Vault 111. Now, if we pay attention during the opening sequence, so the cutscene, so when you hit new game and it goes through that sequence of events and plays that video that leads up to those famous lines of war never changes, we learn a lot about the background of the sole survivor if we picked to play as Nate. And I'm just going to refer to them as their generic names because obviously we can, if you played, you understand and know, we can change the name. But we learn about Nate generally that he served in the U.S. Army. He is a retired veteran, and he's trying to enjoy the rest of his time with his family and enjoy life. Now, if we play as Nora, we can learn later in the game. Now, I will admit, because I'm not playing as Nate and Nora, I'm playing as Nate in our playthrough. So a lot of Nora's details, I'm relying on the wiki. And if you have never reviewed or checked out the Fallout Wiki, it's a really great website, lots of good information. So a lot of the stuff that I just don't know off the top of my head, we are definitely reviewing it there. And then even things that I think I know, I'm reviewing it there as well to confirm that I even understand what's going on. So it's a great website. I would really recommend it. Also, if you're new and you've never checked out somebody like Oxhorn, really great content creator within the Fallout universe, super good lore guy, plays through them, talks about them. I'm actually watching through his Fallout 3 videos right now because they're just so relaxing. But anyways, back to our discussion. We learn about Nora, though, that she was a lawyer that graduated from Suffolk County School of Law. Again, review the any of these details about Nora through the wiki if you want to learn more about her specifically. But as far as Nate is concerned, we can learn more specific details about him in a later quest that takes place on the USS Constitution. Now, we're not going to dive into that too much talking about it because we're not talking about, this video isn't about Nate and Nora specifically, but I think it's important to just understand the build up to Vault 111. So that's why we're spent some time talking about them and just their background a little bit in the game setting. So now we're going to actually get into talking about the Vault itself. We mentioned it earlier, but I think it's very important to emphasize that on the surface, the vaults were upsold to the citizens of the United States as a safe haven to escape the inevitable bombing and destruction of what would become later known as the Great War. Now, the true purpose of the history of Vault-Tec, along with all the awful experiments they conducted, is a video of itself. But it's also important to know that Vault-Tec did not have any good intentions in mind when establishing vaults and making them available to the public. There are many speculations on why that is, but we do know for a fact that majority of the vaults Vault-Tec created were in fact experiments on the residents. And obviously, none of the residents knew that this was going on whenever they entered into the vaults after the bombs fell. Vault 111 is located overlooking Sanctuary Hills. We discover the location of this vault almost immediately after the Vault-Tec representative advertised it to us during his door-to-door sales visits throughout Sanctuary Hills. Through different dialogue options, we can choose to immediately enroll in the Vault's residency or be leery and allow the representative to convince us to reluctantly sign up. This just depends on the player's playstyle. During the playthrough that we're doing here on the channel, my focus is to keep our family safe, so I chose to enroll with no hassle. When the game begins, it's October 23rd, 2077, which will immediately recognize as the day the bombs fell or the introduction to the Great War. Shortly after we complete our interaction with the Vault-Tec representative, the news travels that the bombs have fallen and we have to move quickly to Vault 111 if we want our family to survive. The player learns very quickly how serious Vault-Tec was about limiting entry to only those who signed up to become a resident. When we approach the Vault, we're immediately greeted by military members equipped in power armor and Vault-Tec associates guarding the entryway. Something that makes Vault 111 such an interesting vault in itself is that it's not a typical entrance like other vaults that we locate throughout the Fallout universe. Once we're on the overview above Sanctuary Hills, the vault entrance is hidden within what I personally call the cliffside. This requires us to take an elevator down into the actual vault entrance. And within just a few minutes of entering the vault, we're able to witness the community members just processing how serious the events are that just transpired, even attempting to process the loss of their belongings, loved ones, and friends. If you played Fallout 4 or have been watching my playthrough here on the channel, you'll know that there wasn't much of an intended life within the vault. It was furnished with room and board and even forms of entertainment. However, these were not intended for residents. They were intended for Vault-Tec employees observing the vault residents. As residents were rushing within the vault, they really didn't have time to process what was happening. They were handed vault suits upon entering the vault, then rushed to rooms containing stasis pods. The Vault residents were led to believe that these pods were intended for decontamination purposes, but their true intentions for these pods were in fact stasis pods for cryogenically freezing residents. There are several terminals that we can interact with throughout Vault 111 to start piecing together what occurred after we were placed within our pod. If we focus in on the Overseer's terminal, this will give us the true intended purpose of Vault 111. Vault 111 is designed to test the long-term effects of suspended animation on unaware human subjects. Your staff will be on a short-term assignment to monitor basic cardiopulmonary and cognitive functions. Long-term monitoring will be handled remotely by Vault-Tec technicians. Under no circumstances is suspension to be interrupted. This includes the administration of life-saving measures. Your staff is also considered expendable. Insubordination or attempts to evacuate prematurely are capital violations. Unused cryogenic pods are the preferred method for cadaver disposal. After reading this entry, we learned that the Vault residents had absolutely no idea it was intended to be cryogenically frozen. In fact, this experiment was to discover what would happen if the residents were frozen for a long period of time. I imagine they wanted to discover the effects on the human body when frozen under a high-stress situation. Pretty easy to achieve after dropping a nuke. Now, Vault-Tec scientists were instructed under absolutely no circumstances are they to interfere with the residents within the pods, even if they're at risk of facing death. We see that this was taken very seriously by the scientists, as all of the other residents have died due to asphyxiation by life support failure. This is reflected quite obviously when we observe all the terminals within the stasis pod chambers throughout the Vault. We do, in fact, discover that Vault-Tec employees, specifically the scientists and security members, were strictly prohibited from leaving the Vault and were to remain within the Vault for a minimum of 180 days until the all-clear message was received by the Vault-Tec headquarters. Once this message was received, employees of Vault-Tec were then instructed to evacuate the Vault, and residents would then continue to be monitored remotely from the Vault-Tec headquarters. Now, if we dive into the security logs, we will quickly discover the residents were under the impression the all-clear message was never going to be received. Mandatory shelter period. Vault 111 is classified as a short-term assignment. Non-resident personnel are expected to carry out research duties and basic maintenance of the Vault while awaiting the all-clear signal to evacuate. In the absence of an all-clear message from Vault-Tec, the Overseer may elect to evacuate staff after a mandatory shelter period of 180 days of containment. Under no circumstance may Vault 111 staff evacuate during this shelter period unless receiving the all-clear message from Vault-Tec. October 23rd, 2077. God, it finally happened. The world's over. Barely got all of the residents inside. Not everyone made it. Now, it's just us and the icebergs. I don't get it. The Eggsheads tried to explain to me that keeping them frozen is a big experiment for a better future or something. I don't know. It just doesn't seem right that we were smiling at them all the time before putting them on ice. Shouldn't we have told them something? December 25th, 2077. Christmas underground. Got together with the rest of the security boys and support staff and had a little party. Best gift that got handed out was a Fancy Lad snack cake that wasn't too stale. None of the scientists came. Overseer wasn't there either. I just don't get them. They hiding something from us? Another company secret only for the higher ups? Whatever. Just a few more months till the all clear is supposed to come though. Then we just can start rebuilding. March 14th, 2078. Only a few weeks left in our mandatory shelter period. Everyone's getting stir crazy. Some people are even saying that the all clear signal is never coming. We can't stay here much longer, that's for sure. It's not just the fact that I've been staring at the same break room and bunk bed for over 6 months. It's the fact that we only have enough food left over for another few months. Tops. The Overseer keeps telling everyone to be patient. Focus on work. He's definitely keeping us out of the loop. Something bad is going on. I just know it. April 23rd, 2078. The main door accessing the vault exit is malfunctioning. Now the only way out is through the Overseer's evacuation tunnel. How convenient for him. He has one of the science team watching the door into his office at all times from a little makeshift checkpoint. Got invited to a meeting tonight. Support staffers and security only. Sounds like I'm not the only one with an axe to grind. Last entry. No all clear from Vault-Tec is coming. We need to leave. We're all but out of food. I almost murdered Stanley for dropping a damn salt cracker on the floor. A handful of us confronted the Overseer about opening up the vault. I never knew a man that small could shout that loud. Now he's locked himself in his office along with the rest of the science staff. We're supposed to hand over any food, weapons, and medicine we have by tonight, or there's going to be consequences. I've talked to everyone. It's time. One way or another, we're getting out of this vault. Now, all throughout the Overseer's log, we can easily see they were focused on following instructions of Vault-Tec and expressed concern of opening the vault too soon, as they didn't want everyone to be exposed to an extreme case of radiation. But as the 180 days quickly approached and still with no all-clear message, a mutiny in fact had occurred in which residents demanded for the vault to be opened. Mutiny. A faction led by the security personnel have turned on me, demanding they be allowed to leave the vault. Idiots. I will not open the door to be irradiated to death out there. I'm consolidating the remaining supplies, putting the staff on lockdown. We're going to have to start prioritizing who deserves that little food we have left. I've been too damn generous with the rations. If people don't like it, well, that's fewer mouths to feed. So we very quickly begin to understand the level of chaos that must have occurred once the vault doors were secure. When we further explore the vault, we will find a terminal that was for recreational purposes. So with this, it seems like the security and scientists alike, in fact, enjoyed time playing games and being recreational with one another and even fellowshipping within the residential halls while waiting on this all clear message. So it seems like the intended life for the Vault employees was not actually all that bad until they realized or felt that impending doom of the all clear message was not coming. It's really unknown as to whether or not Vault-Tec had anything to do with us being released and Sean being captured. I think we'll dive a little bit further into that later once we get to Kellogg and kind of learn more about him. We see who he is whenever Sean is stolen and Nora is killed or Nate, depending on who you play as. But we do know through log entries that the pod was remotely released, and hers was opened remotely and Sean was taken, and then remotely we were put back into it. But what's interesting is that if you read everybody else's, their life support failed. So it's unknown as to whether there was a system failure and we got lucky, or if Vault-Tec had remotely shut off the others, or if Kellogg maybe had something to do with that with the Institute. And again, I don't want to veer off too far there into that because, again, I wanted to focus more on the events that transpired once we were put into the stasis pod, and not yet so much on Kellogg and Sean being stolen and things like that. So basically what we've discovered, though, is nothing that was these scientists and people involved with Vault-Tec within the Vault were under the impression of that, they never received a all clear, you're good to go, open the door, come on out notification. So, and because of that, it became very hectic and stressful and crazy, and it seems like some very bad things occurred, and you can kind of tell by the skeletons and their placement throughout the vault. So well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching it. I had an absolute blast this week researching and looking and getting into this. I was doing a lot of traveling, so unfortunately I had to do a lot of my editing last night before this video went live. So it was a lot of hard work, but I really, really enjoyed it. I feel like for my first time diving into something like this, it turned out pretty well. If you guys have any kind of feedback or input or thoughts on anything that we talked about today, put it down in the comments below. If there's anything you feel like I could improve on, that's how I get better. So I'm new to this type of content, but it's something I'm really interested in, and I'm super stoked to continue with this series. And remember, subscribe if you're new. Join our Discord. Check out all of our social media info. It's down in the description below. Come follow us over on Twitch. We stream Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And we'll see you guys on our next episode of our deep dive of Fallout 4. And remember, next week, we'll be back in our next segments of our Let's Play. So we'll see you guys soon.